in modern British history. So let me go ahead and we're going to cover some monarchies in this class, um, but we're not going to cover them as in depth as we're going to cover Henry VIII and his daughter Elizabeth I, because those are two of the most significant rulers in how they impact not only British history, but in a way also world history. So, let's get started. The story of Henry VIII is, well, like many other monarchs, very particular because in his case, for example, he wasn't supposed to be king. His older brother, Arthur, was heir to Edward VII, I believe. I don't know the specific numbers, but his older brother was heir, and as future heir, Henry's father signed a treaty with Spain to form an alliance through marriage, through marrying Henry's older brother Arthur to Catherine. Catherine is going to be an important character in this particular story. Catherine of Aragon. So that didn't pan out because Henry's older brother Arthur died, and which left Henry, who by some historical accounts was not trained or was not prepared to be the heir, was not prepared to be the king, with the new responsibility for having to be King of England. Um, then with that new responsibility, actually he despite not being precisely set to be the heir, the King of England from when he was born, young Henry was a I don't want to say a specimen. He was an example of humanist ideas of the time. He was well educated. He was very athletic. He was essentially celebrated across Europe. He was the example of what a person in the Renaissance is supposed to be, which matters a lot because of how his story evolves. So, um, the start of Henry's reign was very swift. So, for example, 2 days after he was crowned, he already executed two of his father's ministers for having conspired against his father and for corruption. And then he returned all of the money that those ministers supposedly stole to the people who he stole from, who were other noble families, and thus he basically solidified his rule by having the support of the nobility in one very swift and very decisive act. And he was 17 at the time. So the acting as a in a decisive and very impactful way was very prominent throughout his whole history, his whole career as king. Now, in 1509, he marries his older brother's now dead wife. So he marries the widow at that time, Catherine of Aragon. Thus, he not only sealed his power through the nobility in England, he now sealed his power through an alliance with Spain. So, because Catherine of Aragon is niece of, no, wait, I don't remember which one was. She was basically closely related to the now King of Spain, Ferdinand II. So, a few years after that, he also becomes a militaristic king. He has many battles and successes against the Scottish, which established him military prestige as well. And during his kingdom, during his time as king, some very important political and religious movements were started. So you've probably heard the name Martin Luther. And Martin Luther was the person who nailed his criticisms of the Catholic Church um, in in the Holy Roman Empire, in the specific part of the Holy Roman Empire called Saxony. And why is Henry VIII named Defender of the Faith? Well, it's because the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church at the time, in 1521, awarded him the title Defender of the Faith, Defender of the Catholic Faith, in this case, because he essentially he wrote a very important document where he explained and defended the seven sacraments. I mean, the sacraments that you're supposed to obey and adhere to when you're Catholic. So he basically asserted the authority of the Catholic Church uh, in Europe and in England, and therefore the Pope awarded him the title Defender of the Faith, which is going to be pretty ironic pretty soon. So remember, at this specific period in time, we have the whole Reformation, which is essentially how um, Protestantism began to appear and began to take hold in different parts of Europe, as opposed to Catholicism, which would in the rest of Europe lead to many political, military, and religious conflicts. Um, Now, it is 1525, around that time, and Henry, now already around 30, I believe, still doesn't have a male heir. So let's go here. Um, with his wife Catherine, Catherine had, I believe, at least five stillbirths. One of them being a boy, the rest of them being girls. But she was the mother of Mary the First. She would later on be Mary the First when she also became queen. But the problem was that, according to succession law at the time, in those specific years, Henry didn't have a male heir. If you don't have a male heir, then you don't have a kingdom. What is going to happen to the kingdom? It's going to be civil war. It's going to be a disaster. Everyone is going to vie for the throne. It's going to be hell on earth. So, what to do? At the time, already Henry was a womanizer. He already, according to historians, had mistresses and was already sleeping around. But you can only have an heir if you have a male heir through a marriage. So you need to be married in order for that child to be quote unquote legitimate at the time. And only a legitimate child born of a marriage, a Catholic marriage or whatever, can be declared heir, can be part of like legally heir. So, Henry, it's called the king's great matter, the king's a great issue. And Catherine was at that time like around 35, 36 probably, so she was getting old. So she wasn't, and she already had a lot of stillbirths. So, what to do? During that time, Henry was already sleeping around, and he was already sleeping with Anne's older sister, Anne, who would also be queen later on. And she had Anne's older sister as mistress. And then he met Anne, and he said, "I want to sleep with you also, and you're hot. I want to sleep with you." And Anne, uh, in a way, was like, "No, that's not Christian. That's not proper. That's not correct." Some say in an act of intelligence, others say in an act of purity, others say in an act of cunning, and was one of the reasons for Henry essentially seeking a divorce. Now remember, this is the 16th century. Divorce is not something that you can do easily. That's not something that is allowed for just about anyone. The Pope needs to officially, in his role as Pope, annul a marriage and essentially declare a marriage as something that didn't happen and doesn't matter and has no official obligation. And at this time, from the Pope's perspective, you have England, which is a very powerful kingdom. You have Spain, which is another very powerful kingdom. You have the Holy Roman Empire, which is then another powerful kingdom. And you're managing all of these technically Christian states. And now at the same time, we also have these many specific kingdoms that are supporting breaking away from the legitimacy of the Pope. One of the main arguments of Protestantism is that why would you subject yourself to the authority of someone across the globe on religious matters? It makes no sense. So the Pope, the Catholic Pope, trying to maintain his authority, needs to be very conscious of the things that he's doing. So Henry asks for a divorce. The Pope says no, that's not going to happen. And then Henry says, "Okay, um, I'm going to get a divorce anyways, and you have no authority over anybody in England." And then the Pope says, "Okay, then you're excommunicated." And then Henry says, "Okay, great. All of the monasteries, around the 900 monasteries that the Catholic Church has in England, I'm destroying all of them, and I'm giving all of that money to the nobles and to other people. So no Catholicism anymore in England at all." So that's the start of essentially the English Church, the modern English Church. Um, and it's a bit reductive to say that the modern English church exists because Henry wanted to get a divorce and the Pope said no. But in a way, that's the reality of the situation. So he marries Anne, and Anne is very important for the story because she's the mother of Elizabeth I, a monarch who we're also going to cover. And then later on, didn't produce a male heir. again, same issue. We've already been through this dance. But then in this case, instead of seeking another divorce, because he can grant himself a divorce, he is now literally the head of the church in England. Um, there's different accusations of treason and adultery, and I don't know, some other charges brought against Anne. Anne is declared a traitor. She's executed. She's beheaded. And Henry marries Jane Seymour, and he finally has a male heir, Edward VI. Then there's other wives who we're not really going to cover in too much detail, but as we can see, Henry wasn't the most stable in regards to his personal life. But that then, of course, has repercussions on the rest of the kingdom, because again, he is an absolute monarch. He is the king of England. So an easy rhyme to remember what happened to each wife is divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. So he divorced Catherine, he beheaded Anne Boleyn. Jane Seymour died during childbirth. So he got a male heir, but he lost his wife because she died in childbirth. Then when he married Anne later on, he divorced her, and Catherine was also found guilty of treason. I don't remember if there was actually any treason or any agreement, historical agreement that it was treason or not. And then Catherine Parr was his wife for the rest of his life until the day he died, even nursing him on his deathbed. So again, divorced Catherine of Aragon, huge mess with the Kingdom of Spain then for having done that. He found Anne Boleyn guilty of treason, so she was executed. Then Jane Seymour died at childbirth. Then he divorced Anne of Cleves. Then he beheaded Catherine Howard, and then Catherine Parr survived him, basically continued living after he died. So here is the sort of timeline for Henry's centralization of power and consolidation of power, both uh, religious and political. Because remember, he was already sort of a humanist king, a Renaissance king, a very military successful king. Um, because he had successes against Scotland, he had successes, military successes in France. But then, after the issues with his divorce, there are some reforms that Henry instituted. First of all, is that all appeals, all issues, all cases regarding church law or church doctrine or any ecclesiastical issues needed to be heard in England. So not in Rome. Is not the Pope that is going to make any sort of decisions regarding the church. It's the decisions need to be made in England. Then afterwards, after his break off from the Roman Catholic Church, there was the submission of the clergy, where all clergy, all priests, all bishops, all cardinals needed to basically submit to the authority of the king. Because in theory, all priests, all bishops, all cardinals are under the authority of the Pope, which at this point, Henry is excommunicated in regards to the Pope. He's no longer a Christian. He's no longer afforded the protections of the Catholic Church. And the Church of England, which he is now head of, is essentially a different church. even if it's the same religion, it's a different church. And the question then is put, who are you beholden to? Are you beholden to the Pope in Rome or to me, your king, who and I am right here in front of you? And the Pope is not going to come and save you if you declare yourself loyal to the Pope and not to me. So he puts all of the clergy in the position of needing to submit to the authority of the king, not any religious authority, not the word of God, not the word of the Pope, to his authority as absolute monarch and ruler of England. Then, of course, if he is excommunicated and he has a completely separate church from the Church of Rome, then absolutely no English subject and no person in England is subject to pay absolutely anything to the Catholic Church. No taxes, no indulgences, no tithes. All of those go directly to the king because the king is the head of the church. No money for the Pope from England. And then we have on the political side before Edward was born, uh, his son in his third marriage. He essentially said, okay, this law of succession is not working for me. There's no male heir, and there's not going to be any succession war. I declare that Elizabeth is my heir, Elizabeth the First. She is my heir, and the daughter I had with Catherine, since that marriage is annulled, since I've had a divorce, Mary is a bastard. Mary is not a legitimate child. She cannot inherit the throne. And that was like a temporary measure to solve the succession issue. Then in 1536, we sort of take a step further, and Henry essentially enacted the Act of Supremacy, which essentially stated that if you do not recognize the authority of the king himself, then you are a traitor and you're um, going against the supremacy, my supremacy as king, as head of the church, head of the state, head of the whole of England. So what happens? This specific act, when specific people did not essentially submit to him, like Thomas More, who was later declared a saint for not submitting to him, he now has legal justification to execute them, to get rid of them. And it's all codified and it's all established and it's all very orderly and very legal proceedings where if you do not recognize my authority as King of England, then you are a traitor to England. That's essentially what the Act of Supremacy was for. Taking it also and expanding it was also the succession to the crown, where before the king dies, which was previously the case. Previously the case was that after the king died, the nobles and the church and all important people had to recognize the heir. And Henry was like, no, right now, all of you recognize my heir. Say, yes, that is the heir, and that is the person who is going to inherit England. And if you don't, you're a traitor. And if you're a traitor, you get beheaded. You get executed. Very, very simple choice to everybody. Then he passes a lot of other reforms that declare many different acts as are now punishable by death. It's supposed to say that. um, the legal justification for determining treason and determining specific acts um, as treason against England. He at this point completely abolished all of the authority of Rome in England. The Roman Christian Catholic Church has absolutely no control over the church in England, or any land, or any property, or any riches for that matter. All of that is either the property now of the crown and the English church, which is a part of the crown, or has been basically given to other people, like prominent nobles, and particularly church land. And then we have the all of the different orders of monks uh, who still may harbor some sort of allegiance to the Pope in Rome. All of those houses, all of those monasteries, all of those places are now dissolved. They're no longer recognized by the English Church, so they have no reason to exist. So either expelled, either be expelled, or be now part of the Church of England. So I want to. These are only two questions here, but I want to go and let me see where we have. Here we go. This is question number one. I'm gonna put the questions here. And these are the questions that we're going to have as discussion. Let me move things because there are 4 questions, but I haven't put them here yet. So, question number 1 is, when the law belongs to the man who makes it, can any subject ever truly ever be safe? Thinking about, for example, the execution of Thomas More, the act of supremacy was essentially introduced so he could get rid of Thomas More, who was a very devout, very prominent, very powerful Catholic Christian, part of um, Henry's council. So when he enacted the act of supremacy, and Thomas More predictably said, "I am beholden to the Pope in Rome," then that gave Henry the right, according to the law he created, to execute him. And so then in that case, what is the law for? So this is the second question. Let's also make this a bit smaller, and bloop, and bloop. The second question is it possible to build something just using unjust means? The independence of the Church of England, the start of the English national identity, the whole English Reformation, an independent church, a Bible in English. That was something promoted by Henry to basically expand his religious influence to the masses. The Bible is now in English, whereas previously the Bible was only in Latin. And with all of these laws and with all of these legal reformations, he also, in a way, planted the seeds for what would eventually become a parliament. But all of these things, all of these quote unquote good things, came from Henry's self-interest. Okay, they came from his self-interested break with Rome, and that's the fact that the things that came from his decision are good vindicate him in any way. um, Especially considering the other movements that were already happening throughout Europe for the Reformation. So it's not like Henry thought of breaking from the Catholic Church out of nowhere. There were already other currents of religious thought. Then we have the next question, which is, what is the price of progress? Now, um, the monasteries that Henry dissolved, they provided education, welfare, healthcare, etc., for the poor. One of the basic Christian Catholic principles is charity, is helping those with less means, which a lot of these monasteries dedicated themselves to that. So the dissolution of these monasteries was therefore catastrophic for ordinary people in the short term, even if they accelerated what could now be understood as English modernity. So what is the price of progress? Who pays that for that progress? Who gets to decide if progress is worth it? And then we have the last one. Think of the necessity for absolutism. Is absolutism, or is decisive unilateral decision making necessary, especially considering that Henry ruled in an era of genuine instability? While during his whole reign, there was no armed conflict or civil war or war with France. For a prolonged period of time, he did have some military victories against France in his young age. There was a period of time where England and France were not at war, which at the time was completely unheard of. So during his reign, in other parts of Europe, there's religious instability, political instability. There is the dynastic uncertainty. There's religious civil wars across Europe, which then carry on economic disruption. So in England, because of Henry, there is order, there is decisiveness, and there is a unified national identity through the Crown of England, the Church of England, and Henry VIII, the King of England, being a public figure around which Englishness revolves. So thus, absolutism affords security, and is it dangerous? Is security granted by one man really security? And what happens if that man changes his mind? That would be the specific um, the specific reason for this fourth question. So what we want you to do is we're going to make how many are you? You're 30 people. So we're going to make 6 groups, so that you are 5 or 6 people. And we need you guys to answer this question. So one of you can create a Google Doc for your breakout room, and we would like you guys to answer these questions um, in as much detail as possible, providing justifications for your answers. Does that make sense? Anybody have a question about the activity? All right, so let me go ahead and uh, paste these questions also in the chat. Um, I want the chat, not the participants. There we go. All right, there are the questions, so you can copy and paste them. And let us now make the breakout rooms. I want 6 breakout rooms, and you are going to be automatically assigned. All right. Any questions? Okay, so you have 4 questions that we want you to think about and answer. And you have, I'm gonna say 20 minutes to provide some answers and some justifications for the answers, some arguments for those answers. And then when we come back, we're gonna put those in order. All right. See you then in a bit. And there we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. All right, perfect. Thank you, Juan Carlos. And I think we have Ivana also. I think you raised your hand.
Yes, I just wanted to say that it was like a double-edged sword, but it is technically the same as what Mia said because we were discussing that.
Not real. Right. I think I am sort of capturing your ideas. Anybody else would like to add anything for what they answered for the first question? We have Angeles, that's everything they ever knew. Maybe it seemed good enough back in the days. Okay. Yeah. Especially considering that education is also a privilege at this point in time. Real, real privilege. You have to be a member of the clergy or a member of the nobility or essentially a craftsman's apprentice. That's as far as your chances for an actual education go. All right, so let's go to the second question. Second question is it possible to build something just using unjust means? Does the end justify the means? All right, Adriana, go ahead.
Yes, we put that it is possible for people to build their reputation or their power based on unjust means. And it
Mm-hmm.
is something that happens a lot in our current society, for example, with nepotism, people that
Mm-hmm.
get in place of power simply because of the family they are born in. Although it is arguable whether the unethical methods will be accepted by the society, because maybe they will be shamed or they will be criticized by people because they know about how they got there. So it is possible, but it isn't justified most of the time.
Whether, there we go, whether this means would be widely acceptable. Okay, yes, so Very much possible to create power, very much possible to build power through unjust means. The question is the acceptance of that power. All right, perfect. Anybody else? Let's see. Let's go with room number one. I
I
have,
have a
yeah, go ahead, Juan Carlos.
I just have a question.
Yes.
I relate this question. Is it possible to build something just using unjust means? Does
Mm-hmm.
the end ever justify the means? That remember me of the dilemma or questioning if it was right to for the United States throwing those atomic bombs to Japan in Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end the
Mm-hmm.
war,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't that if it wasn't like that, they would probably have to have an invasion and more people would have need to die or something like that.
Yes. The
I
war
just
the war
remember of
would
those.
have lasted longer.
Yeah,
I think that's
unnecessary victims. More there would have been more unnecessary victims.
uh-huh. Does that justify the means though?
I don't know if it justify, but it's just you have to decide whether or not, and you have to add up on that. I think
Okay. So then it's up to each person.
yes, this is not like a math problem. You see, it's different. There isn't an
It
universal law that everybody can agree on. It's
yeah,
different, right?
it's a moral dilemma that thankfully we can discuss now because we're not living in the 16th century. Um, justifies the means. They can be analyzed, but it's not cut and dry. All right. Of course, let me know if I'm missing anything from the notes that I'm writing down. I'm just writing down what I understand your arguments are in this case. I was going to call room number one. In room number one, I have Mateo, Luz, Isaac, Estrella, and Angeles. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add here? Isaac, go ahead.
Yeah, so our main argument was that, let's see, even if the goal is good, ungood methods could cause lasting harm and ethical questions in the future. You could build something good, but at what price? That was our counter question.
Yes,
Yes.
because it cause lasting harm and
Ethical
continued
and ethical
questioning.
questions.
Uh, Moral questioning of the means. Okay, all right, good, perfect. Anybody else? Luzmilia, go ahead.
Yes. I just wanted to say that with my group, we got to the very wording of the question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to build something just using unjust means?
Mm-hmm.
To that maybe, or that absolutely not just, but
Mm-hmm.
still valuable.
Mm. All right, and therefore, even if it was built through unjust means, it might still be worth preserving in a way. Isaac, yes, go ahead. What's up?
I just wanted to say a little comment that
Mm-hmm.
question seemed a bit strange because, I mean, for example, if you want to make a spicy food, you have to use spicy ingredients.
Yeah.
That's I just wanted to give a comment about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so if you create, I mean, thinking from Henry VIII's perspective, if you create a period of peace and progress and stability for the nobility, the church, the common people, and the people are genuinely happy with your kingdom, even though you killed your wife, you killed your political opponents, you've ensured your supremacy through unjust means. Thus, the peace and tranquility and economical progress, are those justified? I mean, are those like is that end justified in independent of the ingredients that you use to cook them?
I mean, it's definitely wrong to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just thinking about it, it's a cruel thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
But everybody's happy with you who's alive.
oh, okay.
It's kind of hard to know. It's like it's not totally well. It's grown, but it's not. It is even though it is grown, it still have positive effects. So that
Yeah.
can kind of confuse you, right? Uh,
Yes, the positive effects are very much there, and this is like we mentioned, like I mentioned before, and like you mentioned before, but not in those specific words. It's a moral issue in this case. There is no question. We're not questioning whether what Henry VIII did was just or unjust. It was most certainly something that he did because of his self-interest, the preservation of his dynasty, the issue of having a male heir, um, was at that specific time one of the main driving factors for the great matter, the king's great matter of importance, the dissolution of his marriage, and therefore the creation of the Church of England, and therefore the independence of England and the political consolidation of power in England, and people no longer having to in a way no longer having to pay taxes and tithes and other things to Rome. So the idea of sovereignty, and all English people are only obliged to the English monarchy, not to the Holy Roman Empire and the Habsburgs and the power of Rome and the power of the church, etc. It was all just consolidate, and which then in turn creates stability and creates uh in a way peace and progress. So the end is positive, the means negative. There's very little space for discussion there. But is it then uh can we say then that the end justify the means, or is it a question of degree? Like, for example, if one person needs to die and everybody is going to live happy and prosperous lives, is that then acceptable, as opposed to 1,000 people need to die and then the rest of the people are going to live happy and prosperous lives? Like, is it a matter of a number then, or if it's or is it black and white? if one person is going to suffer, then it's absolutely unjustified to implement these sorts of changes. For example, we have it is also like the people that say Stroessner was the best president because he built a lot of things and there was less crime, ignoring the murder and imprisonment of innocent people. It's exactly the same discussion, but we're using Henry VIII instead of a modern issue. If there was no freedom of speech, then everybody would have to forcefully accept the ruler's words, giving some sort of peace, but making people live with fear. Um, there are people who give their life for the sake of something. Yes, that is one of the reasons why I briefly mentioned, for example, Thomas More. Thomas More was is nowadays a Catholic saint, I believe, and he was executed by Henry, and in a way where Henry literally instituted a new law to execute him because he was problematic, because of his allegiance to the Catholic Church, because of his allegiance and his loyalty to Catholicism. Um, but the fact that people can give their life for the sake of something, um, then is that something that they are giving their life for justified because someone gave their life for it? Then because then the more people we kill for that specific thing, then the more justified it is in a way, if that's how we're going to consider the cost and benefit analysis. All right. Then we have a continuation of the questions here. We have what is the price of progress? What is the price that we are willing to pay or should be willing to pay for progress? Thinking about, for example, the dissolution of the monasteries. The monasteries were essentially hospitals, schools, and a welfare system for the poor. And who paid then the reformation of the English monarchy or the progress in England in this case? Isaac, yes, go ahead.
I mean, this question was a bit obvious because the people that really suffered through this change that King Henry made was that they pr- they lost their privileges with the healthcare and education system.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, the people are the ones that um they're the ones that are losing.
Yes. Why does this happen? That's weird. Yes, there is most certainly a price, and back then, just as it usually is nowadays, the people who are in the less advantageous positions are usually the ones who end up paying the price. Minorities, poor people, and other less privileged groups are the ones who pay the price of quote unquote progress. So is that then the price of progress always, or is there other ways to bring about progress? We have changes are mandatory. We can wait for progression without with. I'm not understanding that specific sentence, Fiorella. If you could explain that. Sacrifice is the price of progress, and these groups are the ones paying it. Yes, but is progress always going to imply some sort of sacrifice? Fiorella, go ahead.
Just for develop my sentences that
Mm-hmm.
in any case, in any progress, if it's bad or good, we have changes. We
Mm-hmm.
can we can want, we can wait, we can have progress without changes because you
Mm-hmm.
can expect anything new if you don't do anything
Anything
different.
different? Yeah.
Yes,
And is there always going to be a price to that change?
yes,
Okay.
good or not.
The ultimate question is whether or not we are willing to
To pay that
pay
price.
that price, right? Right.
Well, technically, yes. All right, perfect. Anybody else have any ideas on this specific part of the questionnaire? Right now it's working for some reason. Okay, cool. And then we have regarding the necessity of absolutism. Is absolutism necessary? Um, Especially making the case for Henry first. Europe was literally tearing itself apart in religious wars, and England, what essentially provided for itself a strong core, a strong center. But what kind of security is it if it depends on one man's mood? And then what happened the moment Henry died would be the question. Does anybody have any ideas they would like to add for this specific part? Or do you disagree and say that absolutism is never necessary? Fiorella, go ahead.
Something we discussed in our
Mm-hmm.
group. We also give the example of the era of Señor Francia
Mm-hmm.
in our country,
Yep.
and it that time occurs after the independence of Paraguay,
Mm-hmm.
and thanks to that, all the Paraguayans have access to education, but only for a level of education, just for you be a thinker, but you can go ahead for more to go against the government.
Yeah.
But thanks to that, we were independent in the economic way,
Mm-hmm.
and we can progress as a society.
Yeah, as a self-sufficient society, yeah.
Yeah,
But then is it really security? Is a dangerous situation? Was that the only option? There are many other questions that come out of that specific situation, for example. And we can very clearly draw parallels between our history with France's government, for example, with Henry's quote unquote government or reign in this case. Araceli and then Luzmilia.
Yeah, I think it's a 50-50, but mostly I think it is dangerous because the ruler can abuse his power and can have no limits and
Mm-hmm.
can be cruel and unfair. But in a and for example, a national emergency or urgency,
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be practical. Obviously, if the ruler is fair, because and he will make our quickly decision about a conflict, a political conflict, or
Mm-hmm.
and about war conflict. So
Yeah.
it will not go through many filters to to
Mm-hmm.
lead to a decision.
Yeah. And then the question becomes the fact that it is more practical, is that then justified? Luzmilia, go ahead.
Sorry, I was reading. Yes. Um, my answer was to think of the necessity of absolutism part.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think of it kind of like when you get a really bad prognosis for a
Mm-hmm.
maybe surgery you have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these are your odds, and they're not really very good,
Mm-hmm.
but you still get to choose whether to proceed. Do you want to take this surgery? Do you want to make
Mm-hmm.
this choice anyways? And at the end of this, there's really only two choices that I or two options that I have left. Either I do this and I die,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe I survive and something good happens from it, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't do this and I die. So
Yeah. So
that's
two out of three are not really good options. I mean, good outcomes. But in one of them, I mean, in two of them, at least you had a say on it,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
Okay. We have a couple of comments. In theory, it affords security because decisions are swift and order is maintained, but it is dangerous because the same concentration of power removes safeguards. Uh, because of the possibility of abuse. I'm gonna add here, especially without safeguards, which is essentially what a monarchy is. Okay, now we also have absolutism may afford security, with having a clear leader in situations where making difficult choices are necessary, but it doesn't guarantee that that security will not turn around to bite people. So it can be dangerous when the absolute ruler is regarded by others as seen by himself as the one who always is in the right, with no other voice mattering as much as the rulers. Yes. And then in those cases, then it becomes, especially in modern society, with how easy it is to manipulate information, um, public view or public opinion can be very easily manufactured or controlled, and to present someone as always in the right or not, and whose voices actually matter in that moment. Is it always going to be just the main opinion, the main hegemonic opinion, the one that matters, or do other voices also matter, especially nowadays? Valeria, go ahead.
Um, Paloma mostly said what I wanted to say, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it affords security as long as the people are under the control of the ruler. If
Mm-hmm.
they go out, then it doesn't anymore because the ruler would want to secure his power by making
Mm-hmm.
an example of people, and that's happened in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So as long as control is maintained, then security is uh, perpetuated. But if the um, if the authority is questioned, then it becomes dangerous for the questioner and in general, I think. All right. And and also who decides, because this is something that was mentioned, uh, what is necessary. If only the voice of the king is the one that actually exists, then only the king will determine what is necessary, and then it is necessary to kill all political opponents. Very simple. But nowadays it's a bit more complex than that, because even though they are not the mainstream voice or the mainstream opinions, hegemonic opinions, we do have access to different points of view. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Etc. etc. Okay, so these are essentially some ideas that are in essence not even thesis yet. These are sort of either arguments or essentially explanations of that can be useful for discussions or for assignments in the future. So they will be uploaded to, I mean, these notes and the presentation for today will be uploaded on the mall, so that you have access to these ideas. So you can try and remember what the things we discussed were, and if they can help basically fill out your assignments, your essays, in case you need ideas to use. Okay, so that is going to be it for today. Next class is in person. So next class we're going to the outlines that you turned in last class. We're going to give them back to you, and we're going to many of them ask that you actually turn that text into an actual outline, and we will give you some recommendations into how to do that, and we're going to do that in class, and that is going to be the assignment that we're going to do in class. So basically, we're going to give you back the papers that you turned in last week, with some feedback, some recommendations, and you're going to write your assignment based on that. Yes, Isa, go ahead.
Regarding our last essay assignment, are those
Mhm.
already graded, or are you guys still grading it?
We're still working on it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you will get your grades when they are ready, essentially. Yeah, so that is going to be it for today. And see you all next week, next class.
Bye,
Thank you,
Professor. Thank
Professor.
you.
Professor.
Bye bye.
Bye,
Yes,
Professor.
Bye.
Professor. Thanks.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.